What's up, guys? This is Elisha from War of Ages, and you're listening to the KingdomCore podcast.
Hey guys, it's Sean. Welcome back to the KingdomCore podcast. I got Chris here with me.
What is up?
And we just interviewed Elisha Mullins. You may have heard of him, or heard of his bands. He's been in quite a few Christian metal projects over the years, currently in War of Ages. But Chris, what other bands has he been in?
He's been in A Hill to Die Upon, The Burial, and Fleshkiller.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few face-down bands.
Yeah, exactly. Sick. Yeah, we had a great conversation with him. We always say that, but we talked about his career in the Christian metal industry, how he entered it with A Hill to Die Upon back in 2009, and then we talked about the whole span of his career, and it was just an awesome conversation. Chris, what else did we talk about?
Yeah, we just talked about a lot of like the recording processes and just fun band stories in between all that, but even we kick it off with his most recent 3-month-long tour with Miss May I.
New War of Ages? ... Question mark?
Yeah.
And so stay tuned till the end for that. We got into that at the end. So you're going to have to listen all the way through, or you can just scrub all the way to the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But
don't scrub to the end. You'll miss a lot of laughs.
You will.
Good times.
Yes. As well as if you have never heard any of Elisha's bands or have only heard like War of Ages, definitely go and listen to A Hill to Die Upon, The Burial, and Fleshkiller. All amazing death metal, technical death, black metal. All three of those are just amazing bands. So go check those out. My personal recommendation, Lights and Perfections by The Burial, as well as Chris would recommend that as well. But you can't go wrong with But you can't go wrong with anything that Elisha has done. But just thank you guys for continually listening week in and week, well, not week in and week out, but month in and month out, episode in, episode out. I am moving across the country in a couple months, so the KingdomCore podcast could be slowing down within the next couple months, but we're going to try to record as many episodes as we can before then to hold us over. So just thank you guys for your patience, and thank you for all your love and support.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's hop into our interview with Elisha.
Gosh, the most I ever spent on tickets, like the raw tickets themselves, was probably, I saw Dream Theater.
No way.
And Opeth. It was between The Buried Me, Dream Theater, Opeth, and
oh my gosh.
Who was the other band? There was some other like smaller band that played right before.
The Big Four of prog metal.
It was huge. It was literally called Prog Nation at the Rosemont Theater in Chicago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think I paid like $75 for those or something. But that was in like 2012, maybe 2011, 2012. So
were those pit tickets or was it like seating?
No, it was nosebleeds. I was way up in the whole thing was like a massive theater, so there really was no like pit.
Okay, I got you.
It's like sitting only kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine just
like
sitting for BT Bam.
It was so weird, dude. And they hadn't come out with they hadn't done the Great Misdirect yet. So like all their stuff was still like Colors and like Alaska, like the really heavy stuff. Heavy. So it was like super weird. Everyone's just sitting there and like we're in the balcony, just like
nodding. Yeah,
like this is cool.
Low key, I'll admit I sat for just like the tail end of the August Burns Red set when they did Constellations because like it's a theater, but they have an open area for the pit. But there was like a couple guys like smoking weed in the venue and like right next to me. And I'm just, this is kind of ruining it. So I went to like the back and I sat down. And I'm just like
much better.
That's how you know you're getting old. When you haven't had a place to sit at the end of the show.
Yeah, you're like,
it was so tight. It's hot. I'm sweaty. I'm like, I'll sit down for a bit.
That's funny.
That's so good. If you let me know if you hear anything, my wife's making a quilt in the next room. I have
that's got to be the quietest activity.
Wait, right? On like a sewing machine type thing?
Yeah, like sewing the strips together stuff.
I was like, that would be quiet.
When she gets to the hand stitching
like, how loud does
it's
she
like
knit?
Super quiet. But, yeah, she's just banging needles together.
That should be all good. We shouldn't have to worry about that.
Okay, cool.
That's hilarious.
Great. So, dude, you just got home from tour with Miss May I, right? Just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that
That's
was
awesome,
like
dude.
This week was sort of the first like normal week back home.
Okay.
It was like a lot of just okay, I got home, then I had a week of like figure out all the random like unpack, do laundry, remember how to not be a caveman again. And then
How long were you out for?
like 3 months almost.
That was a long
wow.
tour.
Yeah, it was really long, the longest tour I've ever done in my life. It was 70 dates, I think, including off dates or not including off dates. I don't remember. But it was crazy. Like we played through Denver basically like 3 times. Like we drove through there so many times.
That's insane.
Just crisscrossing to different places. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But it was cool. It was a really good time.
That's really cool. How did you like Miss May I find you? How did that whole thing come about?
So it kind of came because of the War of Ages connection. So Jack and Leroy and Steve had kind of known and been aware of the Miss May I guys for a while, obviously. Just being in the metalcore like sphere. And
right.
I didn't realize until after the fact. So Dayton, Ohio, that's where Leroy's from. And that's like hometown for Miss May I. So they've known each other forever. And then Justin contacted Jack and was like, hey, like we need a fill in for this tour. It's just way too long. Yeah. And our guy BJ can't do this one. Like, could you do it? And Jack was like, oh man, I really want to do this tour. But he's having a baby like the last week of the whole tour. And like texted all of us and he was like, bro, should I do it? And we're all like, yeah, go do it, dude. It's great. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't really the encouragement I was looking for. I was trying to get you guys to tell me like, no, stay home. Like, so we were like, oh, okay, well, yeah, stay home, be responsible. And then that just sort of turned into Justin going, well, do you know anybody else? And Jack was like, well, I should do it. So it was funny because I didn't really know any of the Miss May I guys, but they knew them. So coming in, they were like, wait, your bassist is going to play lead for 3 months for us? Like, I don't know, man.
Dang, you played lead?
Yeah, because there was a short stint in the middle that Justin couldn't be there either.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Because he just had a baby not that long ago. So then for a little while, it was just me and Ryan and Levi and Jared. We just like ran a 4-piece and had like Justin's rhythm tracks on the backing tracks for us just to make, you know, those few weeks go by where he couldn't be there. But so that's why they needed somebody to do the leads.
How long of tour prep did you have? Like how long before you guys went out were you told?
I had 2 weeks
to learn leads
how many
on
songs?
Yep. And what was it, like 11 songs? Because I learned
that's
another
set.
Yeah, it's a 45-minute long set, and we packed it like end to end. It kind of like the first couple of weeks was a bit of a learning curve, being like, okay, I can drink water between this song and this song. I cannot drink water between this song and this song, because there'd be like days I'm like unscrew my bottle and like the click's starting and I'm like like, put it back, like run back to the front of stage. But yeah, it was it was a lot of songs packed into that short time. So I spent, you know, probably a good like 6-8 hours a day, like nothing but just grinding, learning new songs and practicing for the better part of 2 weeks. And
That's
then
crazy.
Finally got on stage, finally started playing and was like, okay, cool, we're good. And just rode that wave for like 3 months almost.
Jeez.
I honestly can't imagine, like, the little bit of musicianship I have is so little and so poor that, like, I can't remember a simple chord progression for a church. Like, I have to have the sheet with me.
Yeah, get the 1 4 6 5.
I'm like, how do you remember like a full song? Like, it's mind blowing.
Solos included and stuff.
Yeah,
Miss May I has a good bit of shredding and solos, right?
Yeah, it was actually a lot more like lead work than I kind of anticipated when I first was like, oh yeah, I could probably do that. And then I like listened through some of BJ's solos and I was like, oh, this is some work that I didn't know I was signing myself up for.
You're like, Jackie's still available?
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. But no, it was cool. It was weird for me too, because just growing up as a guitarist, I never really learned other people's solos. I would always learn like close or like some approximation of it and kind of be like, yeah, that's sort of the right notes, whatever, cool enough. And then do my own thing.
Just kind of do it by ear.
But with this, I was like, no, I need to do it exactly like he did it every night, because that's what he would do if he was here. So that was kind of a cool exercise for me to like grow in that sense and put some extra effort into it just to make it more clean, more professional, show up prepared.
That's so cool. I wanted to ask because I'm assuming you've probably been on month and a half long tour, probably max. What's first off, were you guys in a bus or a van? And number two, like, you guys finish a month of that tour, which is like normally you think you're coming home already after a month, and you realize I still got to do another 2 of these. Like, how does that feel?
That was the day that we realized, like, if this was a normal tour, we'd be going home. Was a low morale day. We were all like,
you were ready at that point.
We were all like, oh my gosh, it's day 35. We'd have been home like almost a week ago on a normal tour.
That's insane.
And so that day, like, and then the show was great, and we're all like, oh, it's great. Like, we can go for another month. Let's go. So we were on the weird in between of bus and van, which is the bandwagon thing. There's this company out of Indianapolis or somewhere in Indiana that sort of built these purpose-built RVs that are like bigger than a van, but not as big and gas guzzly as a bus. And they don't require like a crazy, super CDL to drive. So that's where we were in right now. A lot of guys are going to be rolling around. If you're not in a bus yet, but you're not so DIY, excuse me, that you're still in a van, the bandwagon's like kind of the go-to thing because you've still got some bunks, you've still got like a little kitchen area and a fridge. You have a shower, which is like the number one thing for me. Yeah. Levi and I, being the only guys with long hair, we're like constantly in that thing. We're like 2 showers a day, like every day.
1 shower for your hair, 1 shower for your beard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like you gotta keep this thing under wraps,
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a better experience than being in the sort of like grimy van situation. And honestly, like you hear so many problems with buses right now. The industry's just like everywhere else. The things have gotten crazy over the whole COVID thing because a lot of people realize like, I just want to go do something else. There's not as many drivers as there used to be. There's not as many crew guys as there used to be. Like there's not as many band guys as there used to be. A lot of these dudes realize like, hey, I'm actually like way better at IT. So I'm going to go home and do that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the little facets of the music industry that I never even thought about that would be affected in that way. And yeah, that's see how.
But I think this specific tour almost is an encouragement to the scene because that's a massive tour, and I'm assuming all that remains because they were the headliner for those who don't know, and I'm assuming they probably sold out almost every night, right? Because that was an iconic album.
It was a lot of nights sold out. It was a lot of nights. I think if you looked on the actual like official like, oh, this night sold out, that night sold out, it was definitely over like 50% of them or something like that. But the ones that weren't were still pretty close, or they were in insane rooms. Like we played this room called the Diamond Ballroom in Oklahoma City, which is like you'd have to have like 5,000 people in there to sell it out. It's huge. So it was funny because we'd be like, oh man, like 1,500 tickets sold tonight or something like that. Yeah, great time. And then you show up in this ginormous room and you're like, well, okay, well, tough crowd. Like. But it's still an insane amount of people, and it did go really well. The whole tour went super well, and everybody on it was kind of in that same, all right, nobody's done this in 2 years. Like, is this going to work? Like, do people want to come to shows anymore? Is this something people feel comfortable doing? And then, yeah, it turns out everybody's fine. Everybody wants to come out and see a show.
Yeah.
And, we're right there with them.
Was there any interaction with you from any like fans that came and saw it, like they knew that you were there kind of thing?
So I had like a couple times where like there was a situation where someone would come and then like be there and then like get up to the barricade, because I posted about it a little bit, but I didn't post about it much. Also, I'm like so bad at social media that it's just like it's like if I'm not on tour, I don't post things basically. And so that just means that nobody sees anything unless I don't have glasses on and I'm playing a guitar. But so then like I there were multiple nights that I'd be like warming up, like getting ready to go on because we're direct support. So it's like I'm coming out there and doing my own stuff, like getting ready to roll. We're not rolling with like techs and everything. And so I'd be doing it, and then I'd hear Elisha from like the front. I'd like look up, and it's some guy who's like at every War of Ages show in Oklahoma, or he's like at every War of Ages show in Tucson. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, dude?
He's like, get back to the studio.
Yeah, he's like, why are you here? Like, I thought you were working on a record. Like, but yeah, so it was fun to like have those little moments with people, because sometimes they'd recognize me, sometimes they wouldn't. And then after the fact, they'd be like, oh, I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
So you were saying before that you grew up in the middle of Illinois, right?
Yep. Yeah, middle of flyover country.
Okay, nice. Was there a big scene out there? Like, I'd love to hear how you got into the scene and all that.
There was such little scene that the first 2 bands that I ever played and toured for, and like super DIY settings, I drove 3.5 hours for band practice.
Wow.
Each way. Because so when I started with Hill to Die Upon, I met those guys because of Cornerstone, and they lived like about 3 hours away from me, just like straight west, way closer to Cornerstone. I don't know if you've ever been over in that area, but they were like kind of over past Peoria, like the Bushnell area. And I live over closer to where the University of Illinois is, like Champaign area. So it was a good hike, like every time. And yeah, so I would just like grab my parents' minivan and like throw all my stuff in the back and then like drive over there. I think I was 17 when I first started playing with them, turned 18 like as we went going. So we kind of like, and they were young too. I mean, Michael is, I think, a year older than me, and Adam's like a couple years older than me. So yeah, we were all just like young dudes living in this weird little barn half the time because they had like a little barn apartment that it was great where our rehearsal space was. So spent a lot of time just being out there sweaty, playing black metal and getting on these DIY tours and doing that. So that, yeah, I basically, there was no scene, but our scene was the Quad Cities, sort of like that area. And there were some cool bands that we played with locally, like nothing ever like blew up or anything, but it was a good like thriving scene. And we kind of stuck out back then just because we were the only band around that played like metal and had like corpse paint and like did the whole 9 yards. Whereas everybody else at the time, that was like 2008, 2009, everybody was just doing SLA Dying covers. Which is kind of, that's how, even the black metal band, that's how they started, was doing like SLA Dying covers and stuff like that.
And now all these years later, you're there too. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, Chris. Wow.
Eventually, yeah, it's like the arc of time always bends towards metalcore. Like there's no, the arc of music always ends up at metalcore. But it is one of those things. It's funny that like it's having like a bit of a resurgence now, which is why you're seeing a lot of these bands who are kind of going, oh wait, like we should get back after it, like we were in 2010, like when we were
every 10 years
being kids. Every 10 years, yeah, because there's always some 10-year like album that they're like, oh, that'd be sick, like let's do a 10-year tour from that one album that everybody really loved, and we'll do that. So it's just a matter of time before you go like, oh wait, that band's doing a thing again. Oh wait, that band's doing a thing again. So
that's
for our niche prog death metal stuff, I don't think we're going to be trying to do a 10-year burial anniversary. It'd be cool.
10-year Lights and Perfections.
Dude, it's 10 years of Lights and Perfections.
It is.
Yeah. 2022,
you guys
10 years
should do
ago.
A like one of the internet live stream things, like just a video production
sick.
of it.
Yeah, like something like that would be maybe feasible, or even some sort of just like a live like retrack in a studio. Like if we went to Jack's place and did something like that sort of thing wouldn't be totally totally out of the blue. I'm not sure if we'll do it for Lights and Perfections. That's one of those things that like I liked that record a lot. And like all the dudes, like all of us are still on like really good terms, but we live just so disparately as far as like all the people involved in that record that we'd want to get back for it. We live all over the map now. Todd's still up in Michigan, Jake's in South Bend still. I'm here. Like Caleb's in Nashville, and like him and I still see each other like pretty often. But even for War of Ages, like it's kind of we all have to like find a middle point and meet at Jack's house just to make things like that worth the time. So yeah, it would be more likely to get the group of dudes together who did In the Taking of Flesh than to get the dudes together who did Lights and Perfections. Awesome. But
I think like just while we're on that topic, I think Sean agrees with me. We were just talking like the last couple months. I kind of refound that album after not having listened to it for a long time, and I only ever got into the more like technical death metal, like some black metal kind of stuff in the last few years. And I listened to Lights and Perfections, and I'm like, because there's a little bit of hint of like some metalcore influence in there, like the little chugs and breakdowns and stuff.
We're still on FaceTime. We had to, there's a quota.
Yeah, exactly. and I heard that album a few years ago, and then just more recently, a few months ago, I was like, I think this is low key one of the best Face Down Records albums ever.
Oh, dang!
Like, it really is.
It's that good to me.
Mm-hmm. It was a funny like product of just like all of us jamming together. It felt like an old school. It was the last record I've done that felt like an old school way of doing things, where we literally were all sitting around in a room jamming stuff for a lot of the writing on that, which was cool. It was like we spent a lot of time in just a basement, like playing riffs and like going, oh, that's sick. Like try that again. Like that sort of like really cooperative thing. Cause nowadays, like everything sort of tends to be somebody's baby. It's like, oh, I wrote this song. I'm bringing it to the studio for other people to play. And whatever happens in between there, it's just cause it's so much easier to do that. Like technology, you can be so much more productive that way. Because one guy can write 4 or 5 songs. Well, yeah, exactly. You don't even have to be in the same place if all of you have some like chops of some sort as far as audio engineering goes. Which I mean, even I like begrudge the whole thing, but it's great when we're in a situation and we show up for like a War of Ages record and all of us have like, 3 or 4 songs that we're like, all right, let's work on these together. We still try to like incorporate some of that, but Lights and Perfections definitely had that vibe. And Caleb was kind of one of those situations. He was like 16 when we did that record.
Oh, wow.
Had literally like just got his license like a few months before we went to the studio.
His mom's driving him to band practice.
Yeah, it was literally like, it was like, oh, well, you gotta come to my place if we're gonna like rehearse these songs, because I can't really like drive to you guys at this point.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Honestly, like listening to, because I listened to a lot of these albums that you were a part of over the last few days, and like A Hill to Die Upon, I never really gave a solid chance because only recently have I gotten into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would not have guessed that for A Hill to Die Upon and The Burial, like that you guys were so young, or especially some of the members.
I know,
that's
for
crazy.
real.
You don't get that sound from them. Like it sounds very mature.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, man.
The fact that Caleb pulled that off on Lights and Perfections at 16, that's ridiculous. That's insane.
And in like a pretty similar situation as far as like he didn't have like a ton of time to be able to like get in there and do it because it was sort of a last minute thing. But yeah, he went in there and killed it too. I think it took like 2 or 3 days. He tracked like all of that. And that was like pretty minimal, like as far as the editing and stuff goes. Like we wanted a raw sound. The kid was just a machine. Like went in and just knocked it all out. We went with Josh Schroeder, who's
he's the best.
He's so good. And it was like we were just in like Josh's bedroom in his house before he moved and had like the whole studio set up. It was like that whole album was just done in Josh's garage and in his bedroom.
Wow.
And it's one of those things that's fun to like look back on now and see. I mean, Josh has like done so much like cool stuff since then. Like he did that King 810 stuff, did the Lorna Shore stuff. But yeah, it's cool to see. I actually saw him in Flint, like, and he was like, he came out to hang out for one of those shows. And I was like, man, The Burial was just like 10 years too early.
Dude, like, for real.
I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, dude, I haven't really changed the sort of bands I work with. It's just I get bigger now. Like,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, I guess that's true.
That's funny.
So it would be a good time for a 10-year. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, maybe now's the push.
You guys will blow up now.
Everybody likes tech death now, so I guess we should come back.
I know, for real. How did what was the transition from A Hill to Die Upon to The Burial like? Because I'm assuming you were the founding member of The Burial.
So that's what's weird about it is the Burial had been around and been touring for like a long time actually before.
Oh wait, there was the wine press.
Yeah, the wine press.
Right. Yeah,
they weren't on that. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So I started with with Lights and Perfections. That was kind of the first thing, but all the stuff I toured on when I first started playing for them was Wine Press and like the EP. I forget the name of it, if it even has one. I'm not sure it does. But yeah, so all the stuff was off of that record, and they had been sort of like a cornerstone and like local scene favorite because Kingston Falls. I don't know if you know those guys or are aware of those guys. They're another face down band.
Yeah.
They were out of South Bend, so the whole scene in South Bend, Indiana, sort of revolved around them for a little bit before I was there. Sort of secondhand storytelling from me. Because I just wasn't around until they had already kind of stopped touring and doing anything. But it built this scene of like, there's a lot of DIY stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on. And the Burial was just kind of that band. If Scream the Prayer came through, the Burial was going to be playing it. If, anybody came through, Plea came through, like we're going to be opening for them. And so that was kind of how they cut their teeth before they ever got on Face Down. And then they did.
Age of Deceit. Is the
Age of Deceit. I know. I was like, I know that there's a name for this probably, but I just can't in my mind. And I should know it because on a like fairly regular basis, like we haven't updated the Burial's Facebook or socials since I got married, like in 2015. But
so wait, are you guys just on hiatus?
Yeah.
We never like called it and said like, oh yeah, we're done now. Just because like for a while we played shows. Like we still kept doing, like we did Sunshine Fest and we did Cornerstone, and then like the last couple of years of Cornerstone, and then we did audio feed for the first couple of years, and then it just started. The thing about playing in a band like the Burial is the amount of attention required to the music to be able to do that and to be able to pull it off is so much more straining than doing something where like the bar to entry is a little lower maybe for like the physical dexterity involved in it, that it like for all of us, we were all doing different projects, and then it became like all right, so do we really want to, like, can we justify in our home lives 4 months of getting unrusty and practicing 2 or 3 hours a day and like doing all of this physical work to be able to pull something off for 30 minutes for a 1 p.m. slot at a festival? It's like, not really.
Just became a metalcore act.
Exactly.
That's the art.
I know. We just have to bend back towards, because that's the thing with the Burial too, is they started way more metalcore and then kind of slowly shifted it gears until the point that we were just like barely music by the end. I got really bummed actually, because so like Caleb and I wrote parts of In the Taking of Flesh, and we wrote Reckless Restless Forms specifically to be the fastest song that Face Down had ever released. That was the only goal when we started with it. Was we were like, I want this to be the fastest like it's ever been. And so we like started, it was like 280 BPM. We're like, this is great. And then we realized like, there's no way we're never going to be able to do this.
No way.
And so then like we bring it down. We're like, okay, 275. We can manage 275. Let's go. And so we make that happen. It's great. We're pretty sure. And then like about a year ago, I was in the gym and listening to The Serpent Servant. And there's like a riff that comes on. And I'm like, this is fast. No. Like, this is faster. So I like at this moment, I'm just like, dang it. And I like tap it out. And sure enough, I'm like, on the nose, 275. So we tied for first with Impending Doom.
That's hilarious.
That's a good band to tie with, though.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, I should have known. Like, we just didn't even think. We were like, oh, well, nobody else is going to blast as fast as us. Like, we're the only ones. So it's like us and hope for the dying, right? And then, yep, should have known. Sneaky Impending Doom.
That's great. I want to ask, be honest with me, Elisha. Have you ever been just like writing and you're like, you wrote a riff and you're like, shoot, that should be a Burial riff if the Burial ever comes back together, and you have it saved just in case?
Oh, dude, there are total. So I had a couple songs that I had written like right after that. I was like, okay, that's what it's going to be. Like, that's the direction we're going to go. They never really progressed past that point. And then when I came back to War of Ages after filling in for them, and Caleb was there and we were like a part of the writing process, there's a lot of moments from Void on that are basically total constructions of Caleb and I's that we always sort of jokingly just call like burial takeovers. So there's like little moments that you can tell like, oh, okay.
I was listening to it today and I was listening for like the more technical stuff in it because the Void was like a total shift for War of Ages where, I mean, I guess a little bit on Alpha, but it was a lot more like genty. And then you also in the background you can hear all these like super technical guitar stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's Elisha.
Yeah, that was the first record that I really like wrote anything with War of Ages and like kind of had my stamp. Like the title track, I wrote that one. Okay, and then like a couple of the other ones. Like it. What's funny is really the way to find out if I wrote one of the riffs in a War of Ages song is how heavy it is. Like generally, like it's actually the like really grimy, just like like that's like always me. It's just the caveman riffs, and then like Steve and Jack are the ones still doing like the super technical, like pushing like those boundaries. But then there's like, you know, if there's they always let me sneak in some guest solos, so I'm always like playing like one or two solos on the records, but we never say anything about it, or I like never like just sort of like sneak it in there like, oh, that's the guest bassist solo.
That's cool. But you didn't answer my question. Do you have any
the
burial songs saved somewhere?
I would be lying if I said I did not have one.
There's a chance,
but I would be lying.
You're saying there's a chance.
Comeback single.
I would also be lying if I said I'd listened to it since like 2015.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
It's been
so you just want to send those over to our
It's been sitting in the locker for a while. Caleb and I have like tossed around some like ideas of the sort of stuff because like right after the burial sort of slowed down and we all just took not like totally different routes, but there was just a lot of stuff going on. We had been just pushing so hard for like 3 years as far as like getting on tours that were just, you know, when you're touring at that level, like you're not making any money. Like you're spending money to be on the road when you're doing these. And especially in a time when really our music, it sounds super pretentious to be like, oh, we were ahead of our time. But it's just the facts that nobody cared about death metal at that point. Like you weren't going to shows to see like cool tech death bands. And then I don't know what changed or how that changed, but I'd like to think it's bands like Revocation and like, you know, Black Dahlia just continually grinding it and like that sort of thing that finally got to the point where you can fill a 1,200 cap room with a tech death band that like, I mean, 10 years ago, everybody would have been just standing around like, well, I can't mosh to this.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I was thinking about like War of Ages in the same way where, I mean, different genre and different circumstances, but I feel like when they were releasing the early Face Down stuff back in like 06, 07, and 08, like when they first kind of got on Face Down, they weren't like super big staples in the Christian metal scene, but if you look now, like today, they kept on and they have so many albums that all of a sudden the band is like pretty synonymous with Christian metal, like, you know,
right?
War of Ages, right?
It's true.
But, it's that the bands that stuck around and kept releasing music, like they're legendary now, just because they're just like huge discography.
And because they're still Christian.
It's like you wait long enough, and all you gotta do, if you don't quit, you win. Like it's just hang on,
play the long game.
Yeah, play the long game. Just hear me out, boys. We just sit around until we're cool again. But no, it is one of those things that I think for them too. It's funny talking to Steve and Leroy about that because like they're not like super like older than us, but they're like a solid like 8 or 9 years older than everybody else in the band at this point. And they talk about those early days of like the metalcore thing. They were legitimately just like doing what they'd normally do and had no idea why people liked them. Like, because Steve was just like, I want to play Iron Maiden. And Leroy was like, have you ever heard of Terror? And they're both just sitting there like in their like bedroom, like playing riffs and like coming up with what in their mind is just like, oh, this is kind of a mashup. I like Terror, you like Iron Maiden, like let's try to make that work. They had no real like outside conception of like other bands are doing this and blowing up. They're just like working at Walmart and like playing guitar all day the next day because they were like hanging out. And
they
like
accidentally invented metalcore.
They like accidentally like at the same time everyone else was inventing
what
it.
What if we mixed metal with hardcore?
And Steve's like, I don't know what that is, but I'll try.
That's amazing.
It's just like Leroy's like, no, it's just dun 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 dun. Like try to explain like
we'll be like,
it'll be cool. Trust me. Like, it's funny to hear that because it just wasn't like a thing for them. Like they lived in different worlds. Like Steve just wanted to play metal, and Leroy just wanted to do hardcore. And it just happened that they also were sort of in the part of the world or the part of the US at that point that was blowing up in. And so they got a lot of cool tours. They got a lot of cool options to play with people, and just being from the Northeast helped make that happen. It was sort of like, that's what I imagine when you talk about like, oh, what was the scene like in a place? Because like you can tell when a scene like produces a handful of bands that you're like, there was just something in the water. Like, why is it like Kill Switch, All That Remains, like all these bands are from the Unearth, all these bands are from the same like few 100-mile radius. Like what's happening there? That's the same thing with like all my favorite bands from back in the day were all Florida. Like it was Death.
Oh
yeah. And like, Cynic and Atheist and like Cannibal Corpse, like all those bands like in the Florida death metal scene in the 90s. There was something weird going on where it's just like, oh no, it's like it's almost like a competitive field without it necessarily being that way. But those scenes do just tend to produce that.
Or you even got like the metalcore scene in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Right? Yeah.
You got so many bands. You got ABR. You got I know, right? That's crazy. So I wanted to ask. So the Burial, you guys last recorded in 2013, so I'm assuming you guys probably disbanded or went on hiatus around 2014, 2015, and then it wasn't until 2017 that Fleshkiller came out with their album. How did you fill in the time in between that for us?
Yeah. So it was a weird time. It's like, especially like just me personally, it was a weird time because I basically so part of the reason that the Burial ended up disbanding and like we weren't doing anything was my mom passed away in a car wreck in like 2013.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like a whoa, I got to figure out my life like fast sort of situation. Had no idea what I was doing at that point. I was still just like couch surfing with my parents. It's like they were letting me live there because they were like, eventually this music thing will work out, which was cool. And then she passed away, which obviously was a big shift as far as like, oh wow, like I can't justify like being gone. Like, I need to be home with my family and, figure these sorts of things out. My dad got cancer shortly after. Within a couple months. He had it, but it like he finally went and got it checked out because it was basically something my mom had been nagging him about and he wouldn't go do anything about it. Finally did. And then luckily found out he could get it removed, but it meant that he was like in a bad spot. So it was just me and my little sister at home kind of like helping keep things moving at that point in time. So fast forward that's basically all of 2013 for me. After In the Taking of Flesh came out, that over that summer, that happened in October, and then all the way up until like the middle of 2014, War of Ages asked me like, hey, like you want to come play bass and sing for a tour? And I was like, yeah, sure, like let's do it. And then I get out there and I just realized the whole time like that I was not in a state mentally to be out doing this. It like, cause I love the dudes, like we all got along super well. Like it worked, like everything worked on paper. So when I turned down, they were like, hey, we're going to Europe with Shadows Fall and Unearth and
wow,
like all this stuff.
That's a tour.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going. And I kind of left them in the lurch in a bad way. And luckily they like found somebody to fill in. They got Mark to come back and fill in. But for me, I was just like, no, I'm running away from my problems. Like I haven't really healed. I haven't really figured out what to do with my life, or like, I don't know what I even believe. Like there was a lot of my struggle there that was about like, well, wait, do I really think God's good? Like, do I really think God's real? Like, do I think that like it's easy to abstractly go like, oh, bad things happen to people and it's okay for X reason. And then like you get the rug pulled out from under you a little bit and you're like, wait, do I actually believe that? Or am I just saying that because it's an easy answer to give somebody when they ask?
Right.
So I just went on a big, looking for answers sort of quest on my own. And part of that was knowing like immediately, I was like, okay, my wife like helped me so much. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously. We were just dating. But she helped me through so much of that I was like, okay, I don't know anything else. I don't know anything about what my life's going to look like, but I need to get married. Like she's the person I'm going to marry. So let's get married. I'll figure out the rest. And that's more or less what we did. 2014 into 2015. I was like, okay, I'm going to go drive a forklift because I can do that. And so
you mean you're forklift certified?
Forklift certified, baby.
Even lift, bro.
What a legend.
Yeah. I was like, I got the Carhartt. Yes, I do Carhartt stuff. But it was one of those things like I was just like, well, I can do this. Like I'd never even like worked at McDonald's at that point. Like I'd spent every waking moment trying to play music and trying to do something. And I'd really like sort of left out other parts of my development. I realized like I really didn't know what I thought about things. I didn't really know what I valued as a person. And so I took that time and learned how to be a husband, learned how to like develop into something of a man. At that point, I was like 2015. Yeah, I was like 24 years old. So still now I look back at that, I'm like, gosh, I was a baby. Like I didn't know anything. And it's like, I give myself a lot more grace, but back then I was beating myself over the head. Like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life, man? Like, and so you start that train, did that, like developed a great marriage with my wife. And then it was like a weird serendipitous thing of like, I hurt myself really bad at work. I fell and like fast forward to 2017, I fell, like messed up my legs super bad and was laid on my back for like 6 weeks. And randomly, Ula from Xtoll just messages me on Facebook and was like, hey, you want to do vocals on an album? And I was like, did
you know him beforehand?
No. I had messaged him like one time before that. He had like, because there was some cross promotion between Xtoll's self-titled and In the Taking of Flesh. Like our poster was on the back of Xtoll's poster.
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was a massive Xtoll fan. Like I grew up, one of my first like real metal albums. Yeah, dude. One of my first like real metal albums I got was Undeceived. And I just abused that CD. Like I just had my little Walkman and it went with me everywhere. And so like it was crazy to me to have this dude like that I really admire like just hit me up. And like back in 2013, he was like, oh, that record's cool, nice job. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. Like, and that meant a lot to me. Yeah. So then 4 years later, he just like out of the blue messages me and is like, would you want to do vocals on a record? And I was like, yes, where? Like, I'll go now. And I knew Jack at the time. Like I hadn't got back with War of Ages in that span of time either, because they had done Alpha and then they were still working on stuff and still touring. And but I knew Jack was running the studio, so I was like, hey, Jack, I gotta come do a record. Like, will you record me? And he's like, yeah, sure, bro. Who's it for? And I was like, I guess Xtoll. Like, I don't know. I was like, I don't really know what's going on. And then after that, he was like, well, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, cool. And I tell Ula, and he's like, well, I've got this new project. Like, it's these guys. Like, here's some of the songs. Like, let me know if you'd want to do it. I was like, yeah, this is great. I didn't even really listen to the music because I was just like, obviously, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And then he was like, oh, okay, well, would you want to play guitar? Like, if we ever played live. And I'm thinking like, okay, one guy in America, the other guys are in Norway. Like, probably not going to happen. But yeah, sure, whatever. I'll play guitar live. Why not? He's like, cool. Yeah, that's cool. And that was basically our first conversation. And after that, I think it was like 2 days later, I seriously just thought like, well, I should probably get my vocals in shape. Like, I'll be fine, whatever. And then calls me back like 2 days later. He's like, hey, so I need your ID to book tickets to shoot a music video and do all this stuff in like 2 months. And I think it was like 4
he's
months.
gonna fly you out to Norway.
Yeah, it was like flying me out to Norway to go do this. And I was like, oh,
That's
I had not planned on doing that at all. So I would just sort of be like, oh, okay, cool. I guess I need to learn the songs then, like actually learn how to play guitar. But in that period of time that I was like sort of like doing all that introspection, I basically put my guitar in a case in 2014 and didn't pull it out again until that happened in 2017.
Wow.
I had played around a little bit with like 2 songs, those 2 songs that I wrote for A Hill to Die Upon on Via Artis Via Mortis. Those are the only 2 things I did between then and there. And I literally pulled out my guitar to do those. Like it wasn't like I wasn't like sitting there thinking about it.
You're just like,
like,
yeah, I'll pull them out my guitar.
It's just
Yeah. Still got it.
Yeah, still got it. It was really funny because like it actually ended up in a weird way, like kind of proving that like there's more to the music than meets the eye in a lot of cases. Because the 2 songs I wrote, I had no part in dealing with the lyrics. I had no part really in communicating anything with the lyrics. That's all Adam and Michael. I just sent them 2 like sets of music, basically like 2 songs. And the lyrics in those songs, like they were dark, but they depicted exactly what I was going through at that time. They were depicting like this feeling. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I was feeling like when I wrote these songs. So it was kind of like a weird way to me. It was eye-opening for me to go, even in this moment when I didn't think I was like connecting to something, I didn't think I was like really getting it musically anymore, or I didn't, music wasn't even really a priority for me. I just picked up the instruments because my buddies want me to help them write some songs. Like I'll do that. And that was what gave me the motivation to do it. But there was some like connection spiritually for them to feel, and just, I don't know how you want to say that. It's like a weird, especially because they are darker lyrics, but they're still true. It's still like something came through about what I was feeling in those times. And they were able to interpret that and just put it to paper, in a way that kind of blew my mind. And I was like, oh, okay, that like got the gears turning a little bit, but then sort of just faded back off. And then Ula hit me up for Fleshkiller. It's like, all right, let's go. But I hadn't played in probably like 3 years, seriously.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so I went from like as rusty as I've ever been to like the best guitar shape I've ever been in my life inside of like 4 months.
That's amazing.
Because like every day before I'd go get on my forklift, I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'd play guitar for like 2 hours before I went to work. And then
I'm just imagining you like shredding some death metal on a forklift.
Yeah, just like
did you ever or on Fleshkiller, what vocals did you end up doing? Was that you doing lots of the screams, or was that
every scream on the record is me.
Wow, okay.
All of the like singing is Ula. So there's really only like two vocalists on the record, and so like all of the gutturals and the screaming that you hear is just me yelling into a can in Jack's basement.
And for warming up your vocals for the first time in forever,
right? Like, yeah, and that was
sick, man.
It actually like it was one of those things. I had never experienced that level of vocal fatigue either doing that record because I hadn't done it in so long. And I was like, it'll be fine. And also, like, we really wanted to lean into the old school, like, obituary style. Just like,
I love that.
Like all of that, like, ridiculous, like, just like gnarly, like, hold out a note and just like, so like, it wasn't just a lot of like staccatos, like, that's way easier on my voice. The stuff I do with the Burial, I could do like 12 hours a day, no problem. But then when it came to the stuff with Fleshkiller, I was like, I'd get like 4 hours in and I'm just like, I can't talk. Like, sorry.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I have to like go back and do it again tomorrow. Like, just wait for my voice to sort of reset. But yeah, good times just sitting there on Jack's couch, like after recording for a while with some tea, just like kind of, can hardly speak.
For my project, I did the 5 songs for it, 4 songs spread over like 3 months at a time, like, and I would just do the one song and record for a couple hours, and almost guaranteed every time I'm like kind of can't talk for the rest of the day, but like the next day it develops into a cold. Like I'm like having cold symptoms.
You're like pushing yourself into
Yeah, I'm like, I'm probably doing something wrong.
You're screaming with your immunity system, dude.
Yeah,
Yes,
I can't practice.
Your white blood cells are really pushing.
Yeah.
I was living in an apartment for most of those songs, and I'm like, I have nowhere to practice. I can't do this.
Right,
I'll go somewhere, quickly record, and then that's it for like a couple months.
I think that's an underrated part of that, like the 3-hour drives I was talking about, like going into like those areas. I would just sit there and like sing along or scream along to like every record I loved, every drive there and back. And that was something that like I didn't really know how to do like proper vocals before I joined the Burial. It was like I always just did backing stuff for A Hill to Die Upon, and it was all kind of caveman-y. It was like almost better if you didn't know what you were doing. So like it made more sense in that sense to just like hang back. But there's a lot of time just sitting there in those cars, and if you don't have that space where you're not like feeling awkward, like the neighbors can totally hear me. Like this is weird. Like I'm not killing anybody in here. It's fine. Don't call the police.
That's cool. So I'm going to ask what everyone online wants us to ask. And I know you probably can't answer, but is there a new Fleshkiller coming out at some point?
There has been no real talk or push for it. I know everybody wants it. Everybody in the band would like it.
That's the real push right there.
Yeah. Everybody in the band would like it to happen too. But realistically, some of those songs that came out on Awaken have been like around since 2002. Some of those were like songs that Ula wrote for Undeceived that didn't end up on Undeceived. So like
you were in an Extol B-side band.
Yeah, basically. There was sort of this funny moment too of like, I don't know if you ever listened to the Azusa record that came out, like super sick. There was this moment like for me as just like a fan that was crazy of like we were sitting in David's studio before that record had released and Awaken hadn't released either. And it was like Ula and David both kind of did their own side projects with Fleshkiller and Azusa. And Krister too is in Azusa. But so they were like these like X-Toll adjacent bands that were kind of happening at the same time. And I was a fan. I'm just sitting there like in David's studio listening to this Azusa record before it comes out. And I'm like, what is this? This is like reinvented music. Like it's so weird. And then he like sat there and he was like, oh, right. Yeah. Like, okay, now let's listen to Awaken. So we sat there and listened to that like in the studio, like, and kind of just like had this moment of these two guys who'd like worked together forever as far as like David and Ula. Like they've always had this creative relationship, sort of both acknowledging like, yeah, this is cool. I'm glad we did something that we can both like sort of respect. That's like not us together. It was like a cool moment to see because everybody's got that in the industry. Like you've been in a situation where like, okay, I'm here, but now I'm gone. And it's like, you can turn around and be a fan of that thing that you're not a part of anymore in those guys. But like, if you've ever developed a relationship with another musician, it stays like you're always friends. You know, all Adam and Michael from Hill are like, there was so much of like me that didn't know anything about music, didn't know anything about touring, didn't know anything about anything other than playing guitar in my bedroom that I learned from those guys. And so it's like, even though I haven't played in a band with them since 2012, 2011, like still some of my best friends that I would, consider super formative. And so, yeah, it's just cool to see those sort of things. Like as a fan, I'm watching David and Ula sort of have this interaction in his studio with the Azusa stuff. But yeah, it ended up being sort of like an X-Toll B-side for like both ventures, kind of,
That's so cool. So then that came out in 2017, and then you joined War of Ages in 2019, or?
Yeah, so it was a little bit before then. It was like that came out, and I had been like kind of talking a lot more with Jack again, because Jack mixed he mixed the Fleshkiller record.
Right.
And did all the production and stuff. So we had kind of like already been working together from that perspective. And then their guy that he was like the dude, Andy, had like a situation. I think it was his wife like needed like a pretty serious surgery or something like that. I'm not exactly clear what happened, but they were going to Europe and they were like, hey, look, You bailed on us
forgive
last
you.
time we went to Europe. We forgive you. Get your redemption back. Come to Europe with us. And that was meant to be just like okay, we'll feel it out. And then, fill in for Andy. And then it just became yeah, okay, now it's right. It makes sense now. And then Andy ended up being in a situation where he was like, I can't right now. So it's good. And him and I are actually really good friends now. It was a funny, all together. It's our, the band chat, also has Andy in it. Yeah. It's one of those things of it's always he's the unofficial sort of sixth member of War of Ages at that point.
That's cool.
Yeah.
If anyone has ever looked like a War of Ages band member, it's Andy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Andy. And it's funny too, because so at this point, because the long hair and the beard, everybody who comes up is they're like, oh, TJ, I saw you guys in 2006 with SLA Dying. And they're telling me this because they don't know that I'm not TJ. We're just long hair, beard, checks out. So
That's so good.
At first I was like, oh no, I wasn't there. I joined, and I try to explain while all the shutdown music at the venues going on, and whatever. And I just stopped. I just accept that I'm TJ. If
so
anybody comes up to me and is like, oh, I saw you guys in 2007. I'm like, yeah, that was crazy, brother.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Because I'm man, I cannot take I can try to explain it, but it just makes this whole thing way more awkward.
That's so good. I need to. Oh, what's that guy's name? I need to Google him.
Oh, TJ.
TJ.
Yeah, if you just look up the old
TJ, As I Lay Dying.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look. Yeah,
if you look up the collapse video, that bassist in that video, it's just oh, long hair, beard, must be him.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Chris, are you looking at this right now?
I was just looking it up. Yeah,
that's really funny.
So you joined War of Ages officially after the tour?
Yeah, it was 2018 when we did that tour, and then it kind of came back, and they had some things going on, and we're like, well, you want to just keep filling in? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, well, also we've got a new record we're trying to do. Would you want to help? I was like, all right, let's go. So we did one more tour and then went to the studio. And that's kind of when I just got back in it with those dudes, and it made a lot of sense. And we kind of felt like all of us were just sort of looking around and going okay, this is the group. It seems right. It seems good. So we're going to stick with it.
That's great. So then you recorded Void, and then you guys did, it's Rema, right? Not Rema.
So I've always said Rema.
Rema. That's how I
Rema.
thought initially.
Yeah. That could be my bias, because there's a Bible school out in Tulsa called Rema Bible Institute that I've just always churches have been adjacent to or whatever that I was aware of. So my mind, it was always Rema.
Okay.
But
so
yeah,
we'll call it Rema.
Yeah, Rema. And we did that one kind of mid-pandemic.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was a weird time because we did Void, and then we didn't really have a tour lined up until February, March of 2020, which obviously the world's worst timing.
Mm-hmm. You guys were the last band to stop touring, weren't you? In the country,
it was us and Silent Planet, basically.
Oh man!
And they were still playing, shows in Texas, and we were in Texas.
Who's gonna back out first?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and then it ended up just being venues. Venues were just saying "Hey, look, we're not sure." And then for a while there was weird talk that Ohio was going to straight up close its borders, and yeah, it was everybody was panicking, losing their minds. Nobody had any idea what was happening. And we didn't,
because I saw you guys at Face Down Fest. That was my last show before COVID.
Yeah. Which would have been, that was only
the first week of March or something.
Yeah, it was only a couple weeks after that. March 17th, we all went home.
That's crazy.
We played at Jake's in Lubbock, Texas. That was the last place we played. And we knew from the shows, because they were all fine. And then suddenly the shows start just nobody's coming out. Everybody's taking this pretty seriously. And we're okay, that's probably not a good sign. And then when there was some weird thing about oh, maybe states are going to start closing interstate travel, we were okay, we got to get home. We can't get stuck in some weird, it's some weird place in Texas when none of us live here. We got to go home. So we just called it and all drove home from different areas. But yeah, it was a weird thing. But that was like right after we had kind of planned on pushing Void with that. So it's a little bit of a like funny thing for us is because we never really feel like Void got the attention that it could have because we just really kind of got shot right in the foot with it as soon as it came out. But we were still like, well, it was like a frustrating thing to go, okay, hey, you just dumped all this time and effort into this record that all of you really love. You guys love everything on this record. Okay, but you need more because everybody's producing more right now. So you better like think of something cool and do it now. And it's like, man, we did something cool 6 months ago. Like, I wanted to ride this 6 months ago cool for at least like another 6 months. Yeah.
I mean, as a War of Ages fan, I ain't complaining.
That's
well, yeah, and that's for us too. We sort of were like, okay, well, who knows how long this is going to go on? Maybe we should like just do something. And we were all kind of like bummed about how things had ended because we all like, you know, we go home, like none of us live near each other when we're not touring, so it was kind of a thing that we all just missed each other, like we just wanted to come hang out. And I think there was like there was some festival we were supposed to do when Rama was that for this new record. No, this is new record. I'm getting things mixed up.
Okay.
But yeah, there. We all just kind of missed like being around each other, and we were like, all right, let's do 4 songs. Let's like try to put them together and see what can come out. And
was this a Zoom record?
It was like partially Zoom, but we all just kind of met at Jack's house at some point in the middle of it, and we're like, let's go. Like, because Jack and I, anyways, we still live in America in Missouri, and so like it's like easy to like for us to get together and like do stuff because there was never really a ton of restriction.
Do other members not live in America?
Oh no, I was making a joke about the fact that Missouri is
way over my head.
Missouri didn't become Tiananmen Square like some places did. But it was like one of those things where we all kind of got together just at Jack's house because all of us were like, okay, look, like through the height of it, we were already exposed. Like we've all probably already gotten it at some point. So we weren't like that hyper concerned about it. We're all roughly, you know, middle of the 20s, bottom of the 30s aged men. Like we'll figure it out. And so we just got together and did the record together in that span of time, and then went home. Really sort of sat on it for a long time. I think between like recording it and actually releasing it was something like a year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was a long time. But
because it came out towards the end of
that was like October.
Right? Yeah, it was like a late 2021 thing. And part of that was just we wanted to sort of cycle in through the music industry is just changing. There's a lot of people who would rather you just put out singles every 4 months than put a record out every year. And so we were trying to balance the like, okay, does that help? Do people actually want that? So Ramo was a little bit of an experiment in that sense of we were like, all right, we're just going to write 4 songs and we're going to put all the energy we would put into an album into these 4 songs. Like we're going to sit there for days on each little thing. And like just every nook and cranny of those songs was sort of like a fine comb, like a fine tooth comb over it just to see like what happens. But, yeah, it turned out okay. Like it was cool. Like we really enjoyed like the end product, but it did feel like unfinished a little bit because we're like, oh, there's 4 songs. Okay,
where are
and
the
then
other
like
6?
We liked it. Where are the other 6? Yeah, exactly. And so it just felt weird for us to be in that situation. Plus the environment of like not really knowing, are we going to tour on it? And obviously we didn't really end up touring on it because you couldn't still. But yeah, by the end of it, it was something that we could all sort of be proud of. It's like a little time capsule, I think, too, of just like, oh, remember that one weird time that everybody was putting out EPs because nobody knew what was going to happen? Like,
I know. Remember that one time War of Ages released an EP?
Yeah.
Like remember that one time.
One EP.
Yeah. just for giggles.
Yeah. So
here's our big 10th thing. EP.
Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned there's a new album. All of the guys or at least Jack has posted quite a bit of just like studio stuff, and he mentioned it is it's your War of Ages first. I'm forgetting the word. Chris, what is it? It's a concept album.
Yeah.
Are you anything
so
you can shed light on or no?
I can't speak to it directly, in part because I'm only partially aware of the finished product at this point, because it's still not quite like totally done. Leroy and Jack have been, quite studiously working on that stuff, because we were still working on it when I went and took off for Miss May I. So that's actually why Jack ended up tracking the bass on all this stuff. He posted some clip like where he's playing like a way too complicated bass part for a thing, and I was like, dang it, Jack. And he's like, this is what you get for leaving.
If you can't,
it's like, now you have to learn.
Yeah, if you can't play it, we're getting Andy
now
back.
I have to yeah, we're getting Andy back. You watch it, bud. Yeah, so it was a funny like little like, oh, I feel bad I didn't track the bass on it, but I tracked all my vocal parts and all the guitar parts for the songs I wrote, so I didn't feel like I missed out too much. But it was a funny nod to see him like overcomplicating, not even overcomplicating, it's just not being lazy like me sometimes, and playing these like hyper intense riff match parts just to torture me when I get back.
That's so good.
But yeah, it's conceptually, I'm not sure what I should let on.
Okay, I don't want to get you in trouble with
as
the
far
guys.
as titles and stuff. Yeah, I don't want
a little tease. Just a little tease.
Well, I wrote some of the lyrics for it. Like Leroy and I kind of double teamed a little bit. The first song I had like helped him write on Ramo was Pyrite.
Okay.
So I had helped him write like a lot of the lyrics for that, and then it was sort of, he was like, man, this is sick. Like I've been doing like, I've done 9 albums at this point. Like I want somebody else's voice to like kind of bounce some stuff off of. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like sure. So there is a little bit of like us leaning in together for that sort of stuff. That's too. Cool. Still mostly Leroy, but there's like a couple songs that I helped him like craft. And when we're tracking too, there's a lot of times that we'll be just in the studio together. Like I'm just there like hanging out with him and Jack, like getting stuff done. So that way we can all kind of like brainstorm about like, what about this part? What about this part? We've still got a lot more of that collaboration that I think died away sort of because of technology. Like I was talking about earlier, that everything just sort of got way more, this is my project, I'm going to do it this way. And everything's basically already written, versus like 3 guys sitting in a room trying to figure out, wait, how are we going to make this work?
That's so cool.
So there's still some of that magic on there, but I'm not sure what else I should say other than it's not an EP, and there are conceptual themes that flow throughout.
And assuming that you guys aren't done yet, you guys probably haven't thought quite this far. I don't know, but like, is anything in the works with like Dave Quiggle doing the artwork for it?
Oh yeah.
He's like banger after
so
banger
good
with those art.
Like,
he's so good.
Best Christian metal artwork, I feel like.
Dave knocks it out of the park every time. I don't know what our artwork is, but I know we've already been in talks with Dave to do it. I think at this point it would just be silly. It's like, not this time. 10. You've done 10 great pieces of art and like, probably 40 shirt designs for us that were just all the best, but we're going to have to go another direction this time, like,
gosh.
No, I love how he keeps
totally
changing up the art style. And like Void to Ramo were like totally different, and Alpha too, but it's insane that it's like, this is Dave Quiggle making an amazing piece of art, but it looks nothing like the same thing. Like,
yeah, and that's something that's like really interesting about like a good artist in any sense, I think, is that you shouldn't have to be told explicitly who it is to know who it is.
Exactly.
I really like when you can just hear or see something, and that's always been my goal, like as a guitarist, to go like, I just want somebody who doesn't know it's me, but who knows my music well enough to go, oh, okay, that sounds like that might be Elisha. Like if I can sneak onto things and people go like,
yeah, like who knew this tech deaf kid would be playing genty metalcore?
Yeah, exactly. It's like sneak my way in here. Yeah. But yeah, that same thing with Dave. Like he can do anything and it's still going to look like Dave.
Or like Dan Seagraves.
Like, right. Yeah. Or there's I don't know how to say his name, but he's done every good metal album for the past like 2 years, I think. It's like Eliran Krantor.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Something like that. He did, he did like Thyroid is Murder, I think, and he did Hate Eternal, like all these like crazy like Rembrandt looking.
I've seen those,
like just thick, like gritty oil painting.
Did he do the Lorna Shore?
Like so sick. Almost certainly. Okay. Like that's the thing. It's like everybody who's doing that, you go like, oh, that's so sick. He did like a Virgin's Crown.
Okay.
Bunch of like really sick like Testament and Halloween. All those like old school like just super metal bands. But it's like you see that picture and you go, oh yeah, that's who it is. Like it's that guy. Like it doesn't matter what's in the painting. Like it's not like there's some giveaway. It's just you can tell somehow by the essence of it. It's like, oh yeah, that's that guy. But yeah, Dave's the same way. And so we definitely can't, I don't think we can turn away at this point. We've got to keep Dave until the end. It's like we got to keep, all right, man, whatever works for you, we got to do it.
He's already got like the next 4 albums drawn already.
Yeah, he's already sketching. You know,
he's like, yo, I've been thinking about your 17th album lately.
Yeah, I was kind of like wondering what direction our arc's gonna take.
He's writing the concept for you.
Yeah, he's getting the rough draft of the
honestly,
Viking
I like
guys.
writing music sometimes in that way, like having a piece of art and being like, I'll write something to fit that, opposed to doing it after. It's like an interesting,
like the visual concept. I think it's cool. There's like a little project that I haven't finished yet. Hoping to finish that relatively soon. Like it's mostly tracked. It's just like us kind of like beating around the bush about releasing it. But it's Caleb and I have written a like thrash, like a Dune themed thrash EP.
That is really cool.
That we're gonna put out.
It's the new Burial, right?
Yeah,
yeah. Basically, it's like just me and Caleb, and we did everything at Jack's place. And so it's like another, just us 3 working in the studio. That's again.
Amazing.
But it's totally different, like really old school stuff. But it was like visually, it's that sort of concept of like I'm a huge Dune fan. Like you know, read all the books multiple times, and it was one of those things that for me it was like there's this world that like you can just imagine and write about, and like there's all this different language to use and like weird concepts that don't exist on Earth that you can think about. It kind of like expands, and the music feels that way a little bit, but it's also just kind of like Caleb and I going back to like, hey, you remember that like Sick Death album that we both love? Like, yeah, let's do just like a record like that. Like, let's just go pretend we're in Florida in the 90s. Like,
I love that. Any chance that might be a Face Down release?
I don't know, actually. I've never thought about pitching it or like any of that. It's not necessarily like a Christian album in that sense of like, I mean, it's not like, oh, suddenly like we've given up all of our principles and morals to write about sci-fi. But no, it's just like, it's based on Dune. So it's like maybe a little outside of the Face Down bubble as far as messaging goes. And also like, it's just such a like a passion project that for us that we don't necessarily want to like be like, hey, let's put some like contracting money on the line for this thing that we're just doing for fun, you know? But that's the other thing too, is like this day and age, like everybody's streaming, like self-publishing in that situation. For a project like this, like it makes way more sense to do self-publishing than actually try to get like label support for something small and kind of just for fun.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'm stoked about that. It'll be fun. You know, when that's done, I'll make sure I ship it over. It'll still be available in all the spheres, but just probably won't have like a physical release or anything like that.
That's awesome.
Well, Elisha, it was awesome to meet you, man. Thank you for taking your time this evening to come talk with us, and we can't wait for what's next in your music world.
Yes, thanks so much, man. We've been looking forward to this for a while, so it's been good to have you on.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast. Had a good time.
Sweet. Thank you.
Well, everybody, that is another episode of the Kingdom Core podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, especially if you've reached this point and you've listened to the whole thing. Massive shout out to you. Thank you to Elisha for coming on and chatting with us. It's amazing to see and explore the whole discography that he's been a part of. Go and check out all of his bands that he's been a part of. A Hill to Die Upon, The Burial, Fleshkiller, and now War of Ages. So many great bands and so many awesome albums that he has been a part of. It was a really awesome chance to chat with him and meet him, and I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Right now, I want to give a shout out to our core supporters on Patreon, those who give $10 or more every month. And those are Aaron Peter, Jonathan Lyman, Anthony Kuchma, Tiffany Cadenhead, Blake Andreas, and Cody Andreas. Thank you all so much for your continued support, and a couple of our other newer Patreon supporters as well. We've been stockpiling the Patreon money, and we are planning after Sean does his big cross-country move. We will be hopefully getting some new equipment and just really upgrading this podcast to take it to the next level. Head over to patreon.com/the KingdomCore podcast to learn how you can support us financially over there. Once again, I want to remind you, hit that rate button on Spotify and on Apple Music. And if you're on Apple Music, you can actually leave the podcast a review. Let us know what your favorite band is, and we will potentially be reading some of those in upcoming episodes. Thank you everybody so much for watching and or listening. I'm Chris. This has been the KingdomCore podcast. We'll see you soon.